Today's verse is verse 28 of chapter 2. Avyaktadini bhutani vyaktamadhyani bharata avyakta nidhananyeva tatra ka paridevana. So the core meaning of this verse is all beings are unmanifest before birth, manifest during their life, and become unmanifest again after death. Therefore, why should one grieve over what is ultimately unavoidable? So, this verse continues the last verse that we did, or as we know as verse 27, but now he gives Arjun an entirely different way to look at birth and death. In verse 27, Krishna says, birth is certain for the dead, and death is certain for the born. And now he goes another step deeper. He says, look at what happens before birth, what happens during life, and what happens after death. Krishna divides this into 3 stages. There's the unmanifest, manifest, and then unmanifest again. So it's like a sandwich. It's like, if you guys have ever had Oreos, it's like unmanifest are the cookies on the outside, and the manifest is like the white filling in the middle. And that tiny 3-part cookie structure, it contains a huge philosophical idea. Because avyaktadini bhutani, meaning beings are unmanifest in the beginning. So before a person appears in a particular body, that body is not visibly present. I think this is quite obvious. You cannot look at an unborn future baby and point to it. Do you guys even know what an unborn future baby looks like? Because I for sure do not. So if I don't think you do either. You don't interact with them. You don't interact with an unborn baby or like a future baby in their current body form. You can't see the person, the unborn baby, walking around. And from the perspective of our physical world, this manifestation, their manifestation, has not yet occurred. But Krishna doesn't say they don't exist, but no, he says that they are unmanifest. The distinction really matters here because unmanifest does not mean non-existent. It means just not visible or expressed in the particular form that you may know of it as. So, think of a seed. A tiny, tiny seed. Look at it. You might see nothing remarkable about a tiny seed. After all, it's literally just a seed. But under the right conditions, that small seed can turn into a seedling, a plant, maybe later on even a bush or a tree. The tree or the bush or the plant or the seedling, they all weren't visible before it was a tree. It wasn't visible in the form that we recognize. Yet there was still potential for manifestation. Then the tree appears. Eventually, the tree will disappear. And that is what unmanifestation is. So, in the beginning, the seed is unmanifest. After that, when it turns into a tree, that's when the seed is manifest. And then when the tree dies again, that's when it goes back to unmanifest. That is the cycle. The form changes, the visible manifestation comes and goes. The visible form is temporary. Krishna has to think about our embodied existence or our body similarly. The visible form, it's not always going to be there. It's not immortal. You're not immortal. It's temporary. This appearance is a manifestation. The disappearance of our body is an unmanifestation. Now, during life, vyakta madhyani, meaning they are manifest in the middle. Now let's go back to the example that I used earlier, an Oreo. On the outside, there's like a cookie, and on the inside there's a filling. Manifest, that is the filling, that is the portion in the middle, and the existence that Arjun and we all can very obviously see. The person next to me is manifest. Maybe if I'm somewhere crowded, the person in front of me is manifest. I'm manifest. Every person in this world, every living thing is manifest. They have a body. Maybe a person is born, they have a body, they develop a personality, they form relationships, learn, laugh, struggle, they experience happiness, sadness, all of that. They fulfill responsibilities, and for a certain period of time, their existence becomes visible and expressed through a certain body. That is what manifestation is. And this is the period that humans tend to treat as the whole entire story. We look at someone and think, oh, this is them. Krishna says, this is only the middle. This is not the beginning, this is not the end. Only the middle. And that is supposed to be a huge, massive shift in perspective for Arjun and for us. Because remember, while this was made to advise Arjun, it was also made to advise us. So every time we refer to Arjun here, we have to refer to ourselves too, because Arjun is who we're supposed to be learning from. So that is why we have to focus into him as well. And then after death, so there's unmanifest, which is the cookie part, there's the filling, which is manifest, and then after that, there's unmanifest again, which is the second cookie part. So it goes, avyakta nithananyeva, meaning at the end, they become unmanifest again. The body that was once visible, the body that we could once see with our own eyes, it's no longer functioning the same way as it was before. The person is no longer present in that same bodily form. The visible manifestation ends. But Krishna deliberately uses unmanifest instead of non-existent. Because he does not say they have become absolutely non-existent, they just don't exist anymore. He says they have just become unmanifest. Because the physical manifestation, it disappears. The deeper spiritual reality is not thereby annihilated. This connects directly to everything Krishna has taught previously. So, as I said earlier, I've been saying this a lot, so remember this. The 3-part pattern, okay? Krishna gives Arjun before birth, which is unmanifest, all the way back to during embodied life, which is manifest, and then after that you skip on to after death, which is back to unmanifest. The visible body, it appears for a temporary period of time, and then the visible form, or the form that you see, it then goes ahead and disappears. Here Krishna's question is, if you already know that that manifestation is temporary, then why do you treat it as if it's an ultimate tragedy? So, tatra ka paridevana, meaning, then why grieve? Then what is there to torment? What is there to lament? This is where Krishna starts to get deeply philosophical again. He's essentially asking, why are you grieving over someone whose temporary nature you already know? Because now that he has taught Arjun about the unmanifest, manifest, and the unmanifest, manifest, and then the unmanifest, Arjun knows that that's just how the system of life works. So Krishna is asking Arjun, why are you still grieving over them when you know how the system of life works? Krishna isn't saying you aren't allowed to feel sadness. Remember this, he's not saying you have to be emotionally numb, emotionally detached, be all nonchalant and stuff. He's just saying you don't have to feel it as deeply, or you don't have to feel consumed by grief or sorrow as you usually may. He's challenging excessive lamentation. There's a difference between I love these people and losing their physical presence hurts, and their body disappearance means everything has been destroyed forever and nothing will be the same and all of that. No, there's a huge difference between those two sentences. The first is human emotion. The second one comes from misunderstanding the nature of existence. Krishna is addressing the second. Now, close your eyes and imagine watching a movie. The character appears halfway through, and then you may become attached to the character from then. Then, let's say the character dies. Would you say that character never existed? No, their manifestation within the story ended. The appearance was real within the context of the story. Just because it was real does not mean it was permanent. That's one thing that you have to understand, but that does not mean that the character suddenly did not exist. No, that's not how it works. Krishna asks Arjun to recognize the temporary nature of our bodies without mistaking for what our body truly is. Now, if I'm going to make a personal reference to this, I don't remember when this was. I think it was around 2-3 months ago. I was watching a certain movie because I got introduced to a lot of songs by. I'm not sure if you guys have watched it yet. I watched Kalank, and while I did not exactly understand the whole point of the movie, I did get attached to the female lead and this one other character. And then in the end, everybody turns on the other character and the other character dies. Now, okay, I'm allowed to feel sad because he died, but just because he dies, that does not mean I'm gonna go excessively grieve and I'm gonna go say that character never existed. No, that's just not how it works. Now think of your life just like that. Don't exist. The only thing that Krishna is saying here, he's not telling us to be nonchalant. He's just saying, control it. You're allowed to grieve, just don't let your whole life become swamped with grief. And as I just said, this does not mean that life does not matter, okay? This is extremely important. Someone could misunderstand Krishna and say, if everything becomes unmanifest anyway, then nothing matters. What's the point of me being here? That is not what Krishna is teaching. Temporary does not mean worthless. A sunset lasts minutes. That does not make it any less meaningful. A conversation may last, 10 minutes? That does not make it meaningless. Childhood lasts only a few years. That does not make it meaningless. Something can be temporary and still be valuable or meaningful. Krishna is teaching Arjuna not to demand permanence from something whose nature is impermanence. Now, according to Sankaracharya, Krishna's argument, it emphasizes the distinction between the self and the manifest body. The body is visible for only some type of limited period. Before its manifestation and after the dissolution, it is unmanifest. Therefore, grieving through bodily manifestation were permanent misunderstandings of the nature of the material world. So, for Sankaracharya, this verse reinforces a bigger, deeper teaching. He's teaching that the self is not created when the body becomes visible. What appears and disappears cannot be the eternal soul, okay? If the soul is eternal, it's not going to appear and disappear one day. It's going to exist steadily and it's going to be eternal. The self is not created when the body becomes visible. The self has been born long before the body, and the self will never die before the body. And my bad, I did not mean to say the self has been born. The self does not get born, or the self does not die either. So the self has existed before this body, and then the self will exist after this body. This body comes into manifestation. The soul remains even after this body goes into unmanifestation. And now Ramanujacharya, he emphasizes that bodily manifestation is temporary, while the individual soul, it remains, as I said earlier, real and steady. The soul's embodiment may change, but the soul itself does not cease to exist. Thus, death is not the death of an individual, you could say. It is the end of one particular bodily manifestation. There are many others on the way, so death is definitely not the end. The soul continues according to the larger order of existence, and ultimately it remains related to the Supreme Lord. For Ramanuj, therefore, Krishna's teaching is not saying that, oh, nothing exists, just fool around because nothing matters and all of that. It's almost as if it's the opposite. The deeper spiritual reality exists beyond what is immediately visible. There's a lot more to the story than what your eyes can see. So, imagine we're gonna do another story. Imagine you're in a theater. Before the curtain opens, the audience cannot see the actors. Then the curtains rise. the actors become visible. The story unfolds, and eventually, the story ends and the curtains close once again. The actors disappear from the audience's sight. Did the actors become non-existent when the curtains closed? Did the actors cease to exist when the curtains closed? No, they did not. Their manifestation on the stage ended. And Krishna's teaching is similar here. The body is like the visible role on the stage, while the soul is the conscious traveler that is just experiencing this body. The stage appearance is temporary, but the underlying existence is a lot deeper than what the audience can see. Thank you for tuning in today.